on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
All right. Good morning. It's 6:37, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Patrice.
And it's Patrice on WUCA this Friday morning. Let's get right to our first guest of the morning. We've got Tommy Pigott, for the RNC Strategic Communications Director. He's here with an interesting story, a local story out of Blacksburg. Blacksburg Councilman Leon Watson charged with election fraud. So, Tommy, we'd love to hear more about this story. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Good morning. So tell us, what is going on in Blacksburg? I mean, we've heard that all of the elections are free and fair, that there's been no fraud whatsoever, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, well, look, there's some indictments handed out by the grand jury on this case that have been reported. The state police has yet to release the specifics of the exact whole case, but they have to do with allegations of voter fraud. And ultimately, what's important about this is making sure that we have these systems and these safeguards in place. And unfortunately, what we see from the Democrat Party is that the Democrat Party opposes any sort of safeguard to make sure that our elections are secure. And the RNC and the Trump campaign is actively working to make sure that we have these safeguards in place, that we have an election system where when people go and vote, they can cast their vote with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, one wonders how this person was caught and arrested and how they even gathered the evidence. What exactly is at stake here, or what happened in terms of this person fraudulently doctoring the election?
Well, look, again, the state police, at least according to the most recent reports, has yet to release the exact details of the case. But ultimately, there were four indictments related to election fraud that were handed down by the grand jury. We'll see when those specific details are released. But ultimately, what's important here, again, is making sure we have those safeguards in place, whether it's mail-in voting, making sure that we have various safeguards, and we see Democrats across the country trying to eliminate those in the RNC Trump campaign.
And if I may, I mean, if there is, we saw this in Connecticut as well, where for the Democrat primary for mayor, there was ballot stuffing and ballot fraud, and the judge threw out the results, and they had to redo it, and people were arrested. If they're willing to stuff the ballot box and engage in illegal activity for an election at the mayor's level in Connecticut or city council in Blacksburg, Virginia, where the stakes don't seem to be quite as high, surely one must presume that they would be willing to engage in such activities for a presidential election, wouldn't they?
You have to assume that, and ultimately the best way to make sure that this doesn't happen is to have those safeguards in place, and that's why it's so astonishing that Democrats oppose it. If Democrats truly were the party of quote-unquote democracy, they would support efforts that make sure people have trust in our democracy, and those are common-sense safeguards we're talking about, making sure that we have very, very simple things that people support, such as voter ID, such as making sure that drop boxes are secured, such as making sure we have safeguards in place regarding mail-in ballots. I mean, really common sense type of things to make sure that our election systems are secure.
You know, we're speaking right now with Tommy Pigott, RNC Strategic Communications Director. Tommy, it seems like this person who is charged with fraud, he actually worked for the Democratic committee before. Is that right? I think he's listed here as a press contact, and he resigned before he won office. Have we heard anything from the Democratic Party of Virginia or any Democratic officials about this situation?
Nothing that I've seen yet. And again, that's part of what we've seen from the Democrat Party, sort of to deny any of these examples. And ultimately, we need to make sure that this isn't happening at all, which should not be too much to ask. And so the Democrat Party has made a habit of not only trying to ignore instances like this, but also, like I said, opposing basic safeguards to prevent them from happening. I mean, one of the most astonishing things, you mentioned local elections that Democrats have been doing across the country, is trying to make it legal for non-citizens to vote in U.S. elections, which is just astonishing to me that they're pushing this across the country in various jurisdictions. The RNC and Trump campaign has taken legal action to stop that, but that just shows that they're not even interested in discussing these cases. They're, in fact, interested in trying to undermine safeguards where they exist and prevent them from being established where they don't.
So what needs to be done in Virginia? Because I appreciate you, Tommy, coming on here and talking about this, and it happened right in Blacksburg, and it's a city council race, and it's good that we're on top of it. But early voting is going to begin in something like 7 weeks in Virginia. What has to be done between now and then to ensure that this does not happen in a state that is now a toss-up?
Well, two things. First, leading up to this point and continuing, we are engaged in legal action across the country where these instances are coming up in terms of making sure we have rules on the field that people want to see. But secondly, more, and perhaps I hesitate to say more importantly because those rules are so important, but given where we are in the cycle, we're building a 100,000 person strong election integrity program across the country. Poll observers, poll watchers, making sure that we have people on the ground that can rapidly respond to instances when they come up if people see something, making sure we have eyes on the ground in every part of this process.
Well, since this happened in Virginia, and you've got a lot of people in Virginia listening to you, what can be done specifically? I love that there's a nationwide push here from the RNC. Let's talk Virginia. What are you doing in Virginia, and what can Virginians who are listening right now do to engage to make sure that if something like this happens on Election Day or during early voting, that it's caught red-handed?
Well, yes, so that nationwide effort actually is based off of each state because the rules change. So by nationwide, I mean state-specific, but in every state, including Virginia. So if they go to protectthevote.com, there are resources and there are ways to get involved specifically in your community because the rules change by every single state. So part of that effort is a Virginia-focused effort to make sure we have people on the ground. So go to protectthevote.com, sign up, volunteer, learn what's going on, see what we're doing in terms of legally, and then get involved.
Terrific. And while we have you, really quickly, it seems like Kamala Harris is the anointed next replacement of Joe Biden on the top of the ticket. How is the Trump campaign feeling, the RNC feeling about Kamala Harris, and what's the biggest, strongest line of attack against her?
Well, ultimately, she's Joe Biden 2.0. She owns Joe Biden's record because it's her record as well. And she wasn't just there by his side. She was actively part of it. She was the border czar down for the worst border crisis in U.S. history. She was the deciding vote for the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill that fueled inflation. So ultimately, Kamala Harris owns all of the crises we've seen. And based off of her run in 2020, not only does she own these crises, she would make them worse, abolishing ICE, decriminalizing illegal border crossings. She is a dangerously liberal record, and the RNC and the Trump campaign is going to make sure the American people know it.
Tommy Pigott, RNC Strategic Communications Director. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks for having me on.
The website, by the way, went protectthevote.com. Virginians, get in there, protectthevote.com.